going on, Jordan?
What up?
How's it
How you
going?
doing, Mike? Yeah, I'm doing all right. It's the weekend, day 2.
It is day 2 of the weekend.
When you work for yourself, are you like emotionally prepared for the Monday coming? Like on Sunday, are you bummed out still, or is it like better because you kind of control your schedule?
Um, I don't know. Yeah, it might be because I control my own schedule. I haven't had that in a while, but yeah, my day, pretty much my life and my work life is set up exactly how I would want it to be. So
Well, that's good for you.
it's
Yeah.
cool.
So on
So I'm
Sundays, I'm
assuming
always like,
right.
on Sundays, I'm always just like, fuck, like I gotta go back tomorrow. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. What's new with you?
Went to how about this one? You want a shocker? Went to a concert yesterday.
Okay. How's that work?
Went to a concert online yesterday.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. Paid $5 to see. It was some sort of streaming service for an artist that me and Kathy's my wife, were interested in for a while. We were supposed to see her last year on a just sort of an impromptu road trip, and then decided to go in a different place. So it was kind of interesting. It was $5. Got to sit
Who's the
in my
artist?
own house. Lyra Lynn. I think
Not
I've showed you
familiar.
some of her stuff.
Yeah, I think you have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. How was the experience? Like, does it feel like any sort of replacement of the live thing, or is it just like?
It's weird because it's not even entirely like video conferencing, at least how they had it set up. They had mentioned it was only their third time doing it, and the 2 previous times were earlier in the day. So it didn't seem like there was much. I guess it felt like I was watching them behind a two-way glass, or whatever that's called, a one-way glass or two-way glass, the one where there's like a mirror on one side.
One way.
Only because they weren't sure if the audio was coming through. They're like, hopefully you guys can hear us. It was just that
Awkward.
part of it was weird.
Yeah.
It's very different from like, obviously if you're having a Zoom
Right.
meeting or something like that.
They're talking a lot about event virtualization at work now, obviously because that's going to be more of a important thing for everybody to move on sooner rather than later. And like, I was talking to some of the guys that are working on it, and I think for conferences, I'm actually kind of excited about it because I don't know how many conferences you've ever gone to, but I'd say like
0
of
or
the
not,
ones
a few. Okay.
of the ones I've gone to, it's like 3/4 of the time you're just like, oh my God, this could have been like a video, like there's useful content, but like I didn't need to fly to like Florida to see this. And I don't, I'm not like a big networker. I'm not going to wander around to the lobby of some sad hotel and be like, hey, nice to meet you. Let's find some synergies, that's not me. And so once in a while, something useful comes out of it, like the other 25% of the time, I guess. But like I would be happy to attend more shit if I could just like, connect and watch it virtually on a screen while I'm doing, some work and keeping my normal schedule. And so I'm curious to see kind of.
You're interested in the seminar part of it, not.
I'm interested in the
conference part
content of the seminar, right? Not necessarily like the mingle and cocktail
Drinking with
hours.
people.
Yeah, I can do
Right.
that here.
Right.
But yeah. Other than that, what else is new? What are you doing? You're looking at cars. I know we're both looking at cars.
Ooh.
So that means
yeah.
that's a sign that we feel better about.
Is it? Or is it a sign that we feel worse?
Right. I guess it could have gotten just so hopeless that we're like, screw it, let's buy cars.
Or it's like, screw it. I can't control myself, so I'm going to make justifications for why I should do this right now.
Right.
I got to stimulate the economy.
Right. The used luxury sports car economy.
Sure. That's pretty niche. Yeah. Looking at some cars. I'd rather you get one.
I'd rather I get one too.
Vicariously through it.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. That's I'm already, like I was talking to you about my new position that I'm starting now. I think it'll be more like work from home friendly, in addition to being in quarantine. So
Sure.
I'm like, when Kim's lease comes up, I'm like, could we get another car then? And could that car be a sports car? Yes, that's the answer to that question. So that's what I'm working on. Oh, we finally filed our taxes, which, they extended the date. So, of course, that meant that every accountant was just like, oh, we have forever to do this. But, so despite the fact that that's been in the works for months now, they finally filed. I got my state return back like instantly. So I'm ready. I'm ready to buy some shit, dude.
Oh, you're ready to blow it all?
I'm ready to instantly gratify myself in every way possible.
What are you willing to buy, or what are you looking to buy, man, with your instant return?
What am I not looking to buy is the question, but
I guess it depends on how huge your was it $17?
It was more than $17. I'm continuing that PC build, but I suspect we're going to get into kind of some of the things though.
Sure.
Since that's what we're talking about today. But
yeah,
the big thing
the tax return is the perfect.
The tax return is the perfect time. This is how it's topical for everybody, right? Like anytime you're getting tax money back, whether you planned on it and it's the same amount every year, like there's no way you just put that in your bank account, right? You got to blow that on stupid shit.
It's hard. I feel like everyone's counting on you blowing it on stupid shit too, because I start getting advertisements that suggest like tax return things.
Oh, I hate that.
Tax return here.
I love the ones that you're seeing now, like for the stimulus checks. It's like, we know you've got $1,200 for a down payment. It's like, Jesus, like slow your roll. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't received a tax return, so I can't do any of that instant gratification, impulsive spending. I filed in the beginning of March, so either I screwed something up and I'm getting audited, or I don't know, it's just taking longer. I don't know what to do.
I only get the state one. The federal one, I think that it's going to be like months because they're piling up for the IRS.
I had to pay the state.
That's why, yeah, maybe. That'll do it.
Yeah, so what are you looking to do with your return?
What?
What are you looking to do with your return? This is perfectly leading into the topic that
so
you and I were kind of texting back
I've got
and forth about.
this PC build that I'm doing for like the gaming rig racing sim that I'm building. So I just finished getting every part except for, I'm waiting on one. I don't know if you ever buy anything from B&H Photo. But it's a Jewish-run company in New York, so they don't operate on Saturdays. So I was like impulse buying all my shit over like last night because I kind of finished all the research, and then there was this one last part that I needed, and I like put it in my cart. They're like, we don't work on Saturdays, and I was like, oh right, I forgot about that. So now I have to wait and do it later. But
is it killing you?
It is killing me because it's like my magnum opus is finally come together. Like I've finally figured out like all the perfect parts, and then this one last like trivial cooler part I can't get because I want to save $10 by getting it from them. Plus I like B&H because they're great. But so I'm gonna finish that, and that's gonna be my big like frivolous sort of thing that I do.
Do you think you're gonna feel better after?
I actually do because,
Really?
well, here's the thing. So obviously I'm big into racing cars and stuff. And I don't, right now with the way things are going, I don't know if track events are going to be a thing as much. I don't know, it could be like a year or two before things get back to normal there. The Tesla, despite being like the performance model and having track mode and all that stuff, I mean, I'd have to do like brake pads and tires and suspension and brake lines and stuff to make it really worthwhile. Plus it's like you lose the visceral thrill of like shifting gears and all that, and so like it wouldn't be the best car for me to take the track like any of the other cars I've had the best. So I think in that way I'm really excited about being able to get like seat time again. And now because everybody's in quarantine, like everybody's doing this, so there's like way more people doing iRacing and stuff like that. And all of the celebrity race car drivers are doing it. So you can like, if you're good enough, there's a chance you're going to get matched with some of like the people that you watch on TV who race in F1 and shit. So I'm pretty pumped up about it.
That's pretty cool. Isn't that like racing a Tesla
though? I mean,
isn't it comparable?
I guess it depends, but I can do it like, before I like drink my coffee in the morning, whereas I don't have to go pay $500.
I'm trying to get a dig at your Tesla, man. That's all.
Yeah, if it's more rewarding than driving the Tesla, that's pretty sad. So what about you? When you get your return?
I have no idea. It just says that it's processing. When I get my return, I feel like I'm going to try not to be impulse spending guy, and
no,
I feel
but
like
for real though, what are you gonna actually buy?
I don't know. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I've gone through since being in quarantine, and as discussed, previously the past couple weeks you and I are talking, a lot of the quarantine cracks have already led to some justifiable purchases. Like, oh, this desk is empty. It needs a new computer on it that I'm never gonna use. So a lot of that's taken place already. So I don't know, different story perhaps, but I do have some. I wouldn't say they're instant gratification purchases, but I have already gone through all of those. But yeah, of course, I mentioned to you that I'm interested in a new car. I feel like that one.
You don't have to mention to me that you're into a new car. Like it's implied at all times. Yeah,
I know. I send you links. There was a downtime, but yeah, I don't know if I have any current things that would be instantly gratifying.
All right,
but
well,
that
by
could
the
change
end of
by
this,
the minute.
Yeah, by the end of this, we'll have highlighted a few things. I think.
Right.
So, yeah, if everybody has not picked up on it yet, like what we want to talk about today is instant gratification. And I guess my question for you, I mean, I kind of know why it's worse now than ever before, but I'm curious to get your take on, first and foremost, why do people need things and need them now? And why do you think that that's changing?
Need them now, meaning the surrounding context?
As quickly as possible.
Okay, sure. Well, I think it's a soothing object, and this is kind of something that we've talked about before too, but it's like it's pleasure seeking, and I think that it is sometimes pleasure seeking at the compensation of something that feels like lost, or something that's not being, been had someplace else. But it's an idea that we're going to finally scratch this itch that we have. So that's my overall piece of it. I don't think it's that different. So like you and I are talking about instant gratification for like buying stuff, right? But there's like many versions of instant gratification. There's like eating the whole thing of ice cream, like I tend to do, or there's Tim Hortons, got to pull in and blast out 12 donuts, or I need to get some drugs or whatever it is. So yeah, I tend to think it's mostly a soothing behavior, and in a way, there hasn't been a more consistent or more adaptive soothing behavior that someone's come up with, so that they rely on instant gratification objects. And we all do it to some degree, but it's like, hopefully we do it in more adaptive, some of us do it in more adaptive ways than others, where it's not like running our life and we actually do build, opposed to just trying to satisfy with instant gratification things. I mean,
right.
What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, I'm curious to get more of like a foundation from you, I guess, first. I mean, when I think of instant gratification, I think about sort of retail, because that's, for me, I think how it manifests most of the time. It's like I will go from having a casual thought about a subject on Wednesday, and by Saturday I've ordered like the most top of the line version of that thing, and I am now like a subject matter expert on it, right? So it's like Wednesday the thought pops into my mind because I don't know, something happens. Thursday, Friday, I'm like researching, reading Wikipedia, watching YouTube videos, becoming a subject matter expert, and then by Saturday or Sunday I'm buying the thing. And it's like all to the end of knowing that like a month from now I will have no more interest in it. And I know that. I mean, there are cases like, and we talked about this in the past, but like this racing sim thing is something that I'm going to use for years to come. But like, there are other things that I'll convince myself that I need, even knowing that knowing myself well enough to know that that is going to be a flash in the pan and that I'm going to lose interest in it down the road. And usually the justification I make is, if this is something that keeps me occupied for X amount of time, like how is it any worse than whatever, going to the bar twice, if it's like $100 I'm spending, or if it's something that keeps me occupied for a few months. It's like, that's months that I'm not spending money on other stupid trivial shit. So, but what other kinds of sort of instant gratification do you sort of deal with in your profession, or do you think about, or how do you categorize it, do you think?
Well, can we use yours as an example? Can I dive into it a little bit, and maybe we can use that as an example? You said Wednesday or whatever. I'm pretty sure it was Wednesday. Wednesday, you had a thought. Something happened, and you had a thought. Mm-hmm. So I think for each of us, instant gratification object is going to take a different manifestation. Like you said, yours is retail. something happened Wednesday that led you to have a need that in that moment in time, the best way that you could scratch the itch or fulfill that need was in the way that you're organized to look at computer parts for something that, yes, you are interested in. There is that justification, but there was a feeling that happened to you Wednesday, at least how you've identified it so far. Mm-hmm. So we got to think of what that feeling is, because for each of us,
FOMO usually, right? No, I mean, really, like a fear of missing out. I think a lot of the stuff
missing out of what? Things, people, events,
experiences. Yeah, whatever. I mean, like I'm trying to think. So I bought like a MIDI controller keyboard thing. It's like a little keyboard thing that has like drum pads on it and stuff. And it was sort of like I was watching videos on YouTube and their suggestion thing popped up, and it was this guy composing all these cool songs on this thing. And I was like, oh, damn, that's cool. And then like he talked about like how this thing was pretty cheap. And I was like, oh, though I have nothing to lose, and that's cool. And like, I want to make cool music too. And so I think that was kind of the time for me. I mean, as childish as it is, just being honest about it, like it was like, oh, this guy did an impressive thing. I could get that thing and I could do that too. And I think there's sort of like a sense of the fear of missing out on the opportunity to do that a lot of the time. Or like right now with the racing rig, it's like I'm watching all these people race with, their F1 heroes and stuff. And it's like, wow, I'm just sitting around. It'd be cool to do that too, right?
Yeah. Is it like an envy? You said you saw a guy, I forgot what the music thing is called. You just said it and I literally forgot what it's called, the music thing.
Yeah. MIDI controller.
Okay, MIDI controller. So I thought that's what you said, but it didn't compute in my head as to what it was. Okay, so a MIDI controller. You, in that situation, perhaps had some kind of envy, for this thing that this person had that they were enjoying. Right. Maybe it led you to feeling some sort of deficit or emptiness, which then you resolve, your attempt to resolve it was to first learn everything about it, but then, see if you can find something for yourself that is comparable to what they have to offset perhaps that feeling of envy or maybe even that feeling of emptiness that's associated with the envy. So,
right. I mean, that wasn't like what was going through my head. It was much simpler.
Yeah, it was just like, I want it.
The underlying emotion, though. Right.
Yeah. It feels like a hunger. But yeah, I would say if we really, I mean, here's the thing, right? Like we're talking about this and I'm doing it from, let's say, maybe a more analytic approach where I'm kind of diving into what led to it. I think if we all lived this way all the time and the way that I'm trying to pick away at it, it'd be pretty damn boring. Like the whole reason for instant gratification, it's just paradoxical because like you're looking for the hit. So if you think through it all, it's just not going to make that hit work for you. But like even in the way that you do it, so like your instant gratification in this situation was you wanted to have an experience, but in order to have that experience, you had to like consume something. So you had to get something, right? So there was like a part that wasn't with you that you had to then reach out and get. So it's pretty, it's just very different for each person, right? So that might not always be your MO, but it sounds like in this case it certainly was. And more often than not, we're more consistently oriented. So let's say you have a few different reasons for why you instantly gratify in response to how you're experiencing the world. And maybe buying stuff or feeling envy or whatever is like one of them, right? So that's why you felt envious, you felt like you didn't have something, you wanted to get something. And when you're out in the world, perhaps you're more susceptible to having those kind of reactions that for you cause you to pursue instant gratification through getting stuff.
Right.
Yeah. And good.
Well, I mean, so I mean, we know that in the short term, sticking to the retail thing, like in the short term, it makes you feel good, right? It's like you have the itch, you scratch it. We're sort of acknowledging that. Then at some point, many times, right? Like you buy the shit, and it's the thing of the moment, and then it passes, and then you just have junk piling up. But is that to say it's wrong to do that? I mean, for me, even knowing, I mean, I think like you and I are pretty candid about what motivates us and things that we do that are knowingly sort of irrational, I guess, on the face of it. But we continue to do this, right? It's like we're still going to go and buy these stupid cars knowing that like in 6 months to a year, we're going to end up selling that and getting some other stupid thing to scratch that itch. But
sure,
to me, that's sort of an acknowledgement that that's okay. That if this is what makes you feel sort of satisfied even in the interim that that's an okay thing to do. Is that like in your practice professionally, is it something that you would dissuade people from doing, or do you encourage it?
It's pretty much dependent on how you're using it, how often you're using it. Let's say for you, for instance, I think the way that you use it, not so harmful, because in your situation, you're pretty well, let's say, budgeted. I don't just mean money. I just mean like your resources in general. So you have, let's say, an instant gratification fund while you're also working towards longer, more gratifying long-term goals. So let's say somebody is just playing on things for instant gratification, right? And they go get their fix that way. And they keep getting their fix that way. And they keep getting their fix that way. And it's not always just buying things, right? Like that's your suggestion is that's how, I mean, not your, how you do it is you like to retail shop and buy things. But let's say someone else is like doing drugs, right? Let's say someone else is eating, I don't know, let's say someone else is doing other things that are more harmful. In the short term, is like doing drugs sometimes a bad thing? No. But if you're seeking that instant gratification that way all the time, not only are you always in that pursuit with that has like a low yield, but it doesn't take you long term. So yeah, in your situation, no, it's not so harmful. But I don't think everyone is in your situation. I think a lot of the times we get stuck in cycles of just pursuing instant gratification objects.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, like that's part of why I do it. I have this maybe sort of irrational fear of like only thinking about the long when it comes to like, let's say retail, or we kind of are stuck in this example, but like buying stuff that you want in the now with the realization that it's not going to be something that's like going to change your life and be there for the rest of your life. I think I get stuck doing that a lot of times because I have this irrational fear that like if I don't do that, and if I'm only ever thinking about the long term and planning for the future and buying the things that are only necessity, that, you know, are the responsible investments in my future, that if I die tomorrow, I would be so fucking mad at myself for like only having lived for this future state, only having the carrot perpetually out of reach for me. And so rather than saying, I always want the carrot right in front of me, or I always want the carrot just in front of me and I never get it, instead I just have a little bit of the carrot to keep me going toward working toward that long-term goal. You know what I mean? Like it's like something to, or I guess, reward myself, which I hate using that phrase, but it's a way of just,
I mean, it is that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like otherwise, what the hell is the point, right? I mean, like, and not just in retail and anything. It's like if you're not sometimes recognizing that all of it's pretty fucking pointless otherwise, right? Like if you're not enjoying yourself along the way, and like whether that's through buying stuff or taking trips or, you know, having relationships, allowing yourself to do those things along the way, and you're just thinking about, whatever long-term gratification, then you never really get there, right? Like if you're only thinking about the long term, you never get to that point, or you get to it when you're sort of too late in life to really enjoy it. I guess I see like a lot of people that do that, and I don't want to be that.
Sure,
that's kind of my take on it.
That's a whole other thing. Like people that are on the far opposite end of the spectrum, where they're like delaying gratification to the point where they never allow themselves to have any other kind of gratification. But that's a whole thing in itself, where those people may have issues with like guilt or shame for gratifying that it takes place some other sort of way earlier in life, that they then, let's say they'll be saving things forever or keeping things forever or whatever it is, right? Like they feel like they shouldn't use it now. It's bad for them to use it now. And then they don't use it, and then they get filled with, resentments perhaps for other people that do use it or whatever, do find ways to, get their fix, let's say.
Yeah. And it's just, I think like to some extent I used to be that way. And now, I don't know. I've just recognized that I think if you can meter it a little bit more and if you don't have to choose it doesn't have to be like a binary path. You don't have to just only do one or the other. It's like I like to keep my eye on the long-term prize and not like shoot myself in the foot when it comes to achieving those goals, but also in the meantime, so once in a while when if for example, like you get taxes back, it's like it's money that I don't plan on getting back, and that was ours all along anyway. And so when that comes back and it's like, okay, like that's not a part of the budget, whatever, like I don't, doing something fun or something that's sort of been on the back burner for a while or whatever, or even if it's like something that's responsible but you just needed to get done, like it's like, oh, there's a tree limb that I need to like pay a dude $1,000 to trim, like do that. I mean, that's something that maybe has been bothering you in a different way. It's not as gratifying as buying a computer or a car, but it's something that needs to get done. And I think like sometimes, yeah, you just need to like do it for yourself and clear your mind.
Yeah, I think in that situation though, it's like you have your stuff sorted, right? So when you get your tax return money, it's not like your budget was well worked without that money, right? So this kind of, when we talked about debt products, it's like this sort of thing in terms of retail stuff or like buying things in the way that people instantly gratify. It's like that's the big trap for them. It's like if you get this thing now, you'll feel better, like you'll have what you want, and
right.
Then people will get caught into that whole cycle. I would say for those people, right, because they're consuming so many debt products and it is for them like a retail type of instant gratification. Yeah, man, that's definitely not adaptive, right? Like it causes trouble. I think each point has to be like well framed out, like each one of these kind of gratifications, like you have to assess what the expectations are and know what the limits are to them. But like most of them too, like all the dumb shit that I get into, yeah, I'm pretty aware now, but there was definitely a time in my life earlier where I wasn't oriented towards thinking of things long term. It was just very difficult for me to have the idea that I would be able to control something later on down the road. It was like not having so much, let's say, confidence. So taking the opportunity to get like, I'm into buying junk too. Taking the opportunity to get it now made it feel like it was in my control now because I had no potential to influence an event down the road. Right. And yeah, and that's like, obviously if you're stuck in that cycle, it's I rode a motorcycle, remember when I had a motorcycle?
Yeah, I remember that.
I rode my cousin's motorcycle one time, ended up at a motorcycle dealership.
Right. Like, huh? That's pretty bad.
Right.
But when you're 22 or whatever, yeah, it's tough to think about anything but the now, right? I mean,
right.
I think the most that you can expect from somebody that age is to like maybe be like, okay, I think it's worthwhile, going to college and making this investment in my future to that extent. But in terms of like budgeting and
sure,
what the stuff that they're buying and planning for in the future, it's like, yeah, I mean, not that I had any money then to do anything cool with anyway, but once in a while, yeah, it's like I'm gonna go out with my friends or whatever and like spend a little bit more than what I could just sit at home and eat ramen noodles for, sure, but like you need that reward, and that's kind of all you're thinking about at that age is getting through this to hopefully some miracle scenario where like you can somehow self-sustain and survive on your own. I think that's like the long-term goal.
Yeah, and I think from the perspective that you have at that time, or at least from my perspective, it was like I couldn't do things before because I wasn't able to do things because other people didn't allow me to do things. So like, ooh, now I have the power to do things, and mine took form of consumption. But the other piece too is like, let's say you become overly dependent on these like instant type of gratification. So like we're talking about buying stuff now. Let's switch it over to like doing drugs, let's say. All right, so I'm gonna smoke pot and I'm gonna get some instant gratification from smoking pot, right? Now there's like a dependency on the smoking pot. Not like I'm addicted, so to speak, but every time I need to feel this
mechanism,
way. Right? Yes. Now every time I feel some kind of way, it's like I'm soothing this way, and I'm getting the instant gratification of soothing through this thing this way. And unfortunately it works. That's like the trap, right? But sometimes it's like easier to justify some of these instant gratification soothings. So doing it a little bit becomes like doing it often, and then it becomes natural, and then it becomes legal, and then and I'm not like anti-drug guy. I don't give it. I genuinely don't give a shit what people do. But then it's kind of like you are relying on that as like a gratification baseline, and you're let's say it's happening perhaps covertly. I know some people that function that way, like they're high all day and they're functioning and they're achieving, but there's still a piece that's missing. It's like you could be getting it from the real world, let's say, right? But like you're kind of taking the shortcut. And I'm not again, not anti-drug guy, not anti-buy stuff guy, not anti, I've mentioned before, I'm into like exercising. I'm not into don't ever eat junk. I blasted out a whole thing of ice cream last night. Whatever. But yeah, if I'm depending on that all the time for soothing, it's like I'm just putting whatever it was on the shelf that may have really been the cause for the manifestation for me to require soothing.
Well, right. And then we're getting into sort of like, the ethical debate of what's enough and what's too much. And like we did with biohacking, right? Like if you just had a button that you could hit that would achieve euphoria, wouldn't you just be doing that all the time to the point of just
I think sitting? Michael Jackson tried that. Isn't that what happened? He was on some type of drug, that he wanted to. I think it was some type of what is it called? Like those anesthesia type drugs. I can't think of what they're classified as. I guess
I didn't know. I don't know what. I guess I didn't know the details of that. But yeah, I mean, like if given access to something like that, I think we would all, maybe not all, but I think a lot of people would just keep using it. I mean, that's why people get addicted to heroin. Like that's why people go off the deep end and all types of sorts of shit. That's why people get hooked on gambling, right? It's like the endorphin high.
Gambling's a tricky one. Gambling's a tricky one because there's a inconsistent reinforcement schedule, which kind of that's
like
the
leads
hook
to the thrill, though, right? I mean, it's like it's not predictable. It's like playing Russian roulette, but the reward isn't not getting shot in the head; it's winning money, which is great. Right.
But it's the instant gratification then is the gamble, not the reward that you would get from winning, because that doesn't come all the time. It mostly doesn't, I feel like. But
yeah. I guess it's like, but imagine you could have the thrill of gambling with no risk. Wouldn't you be doing that all the time? Wouldn't we all be doing that all the time?
Maybe not if there wasn't a risk. Yeah, I don't know. So there's this other piece of it where it's like you recognize that it is purely gratifying for some of these like instant gratification things because they're not necessarily like essential. So case in point, like let's say, I don't know, you're
like people that do like adrenaline junkies doing like crazy shit. It's like the risk of failure or death, right? I mean, if there wasn't that element, there would be no thrill.
Right. I'm thinking of even like in the buying things world, right? Like let's say you were born into a billionaire world, right? So you can buy everything. You're probably not even interested in buying everything
at some point, right?
Right,
yeah.
Because you were born into it. You were always aware of it. It was always there for you. So therefore, those sort of things don't provide any kind of instant gratification.
Well, and that's exactly why I see these like celebrities, and so we're totally going off the rails, but that's okay. I'm like I see celebrities and rock stars and all these people who have unlimited resource, and how they eventually just turn to drugs or doing other crazy shit. And it's like I totally understand that, right? Like at some point, I think we're all so stuck in the I'm just hoping to like reward myself a little bit to like sort of make it through this mess that we call life, that we're like, buying a PlayStation is like that for us is when you get to the point where it's like I've bought myself and everybody I know a house, and gratified in every way possible from like a retail or financial perspective. Like the only thing left to do is to like, do coke or like every day,
all day. It's not even just do it. It's like just take off.
And so I it seems like it's sort of a progression, right? It's like, fortunately, we're just financially limited by the amount of instant gratification we can achieve in our lives. I don't know. I said lives. But like, yeah, I mean, I think that so eventually you sort of graduate from one tier and get to the next. Some people just skip tiers, right? They're just like, I have no interest in whatever, buying shit, so I'm just going to go right to the coke part. But I think I think that's why you see so many people who have unlimited resources going off the deep end and getting involved in this other shit, or like they get involved in like, you know, crazy religious cults or something else that brings them that soothing that they can't achieve monetarily, right? It's just another means of finding purpose, whether it's temporary or longer term. That's my take. You're the professional. You tell me.
I think that there's, you know, it's also kind of dependent on like how you're oriented or how I'm oriented, and what is gratifying to us is also dependent on like what stage in development we either had an excess of that kind of, I don't know, gratification or an absence of that kind of gratification. So it's kind of weird, man. It's almost like it alternates. I'm not going to go through this whole lecture on human development, but let's just say for simplicity's sake, before you're an adult, you go through 5 different stages of development, right? The first stage is oriented towards getting gratification from people. The next stage, people are still there, but is focused on getting gratification from learning how to do something for self. The next stage is getting gratification through doing things with people at a higher order. The next stage is learning how to do things for self at a higher order. The next stage is learning how to do things with people. So it's like it goes from gratification with people, gratification from self, gratification for people, gratification for self, and these like alternating phases. And depending on if you're over gratified or under gratified, your adaptation I feel like I already went too far with this shit.
No, so you're ping ponging back and forth. So once you sort of achieve like,
it's not necessarily achievement. It's like where you left off before you went into the other stage, like what your experiences were. So if there were some areas that either over gratified so much during that time, where it helped, let's say if in psychology, I shouldn't say in all psychology, but like in psychoanalytic literature, they refer to it as like defenses, right? So if this gratification provided some sort of defense against real world problem, whatever, you may gravitate towards that defense all the time. Or if it provided too much deprivation, you may have to learn how to make a defense out of it, right? So some people will refrain from doing something and they'll be absent of it, while other people will like move full speed ahead. So it kind of depends on whatever stage it happened in and whether you interpreted it or whether the world gave it to you as over gratified or under gratified, how you would respond to it. And I know that that's like way oversimplified and way too complicated to talk about on a 1 hour thing, but that's the difference maker between like why one person gets instant gratification from, let's say, buying a thing, where someone else might get instant gratification from like going off into, you know, I don't know, they just want to like leave everything behind and avoid everything, so they'll just like go leave work, versus like someone will want to go do drugs, versus someone wants to like eat ice cream until they're sick every day, right? It's kind of dependent on what stage they were in and what sort of like what their experience was of it then. So the little, like if you're using an earlier stage instant gratification, it's not a bad thing, like buying stuff, right? It's like you're consuming shit. It's not bad if you're using other kind of like long-term gratifications that are both doing something for self, like kind of going in that stage order, and then doing something with others, like connected. And that's like a hard balancing act, man. Like, so there always has to be this good enough between enough for me so I can satisfy this part in this stage, enough for these people that I'm doing it with. That's got to be good enough, balanced. And there's never like the right answer. So it's like you kind of, you know, it's always like moving until you find a good enough as you progress. The issue is if I'm doing instant gratification shit all the time, and it's a really early one, then I'm not like figuring it out through the rest of the stages and figuring out how to be adaptive with people.
Right. Is it like something that you deal with professionally? Is this a topic that comes up often that is a part of like treatment or how people cope with things? Or is this just something that we think about a lot because we're insane and we buy a lot of stupid shit?
Yeah. I mean, from my experience, it's always what's going on. You and I are talking about it because, you know, we're going back and forth about like, I want this computer, check out this car prices, look at this auction.
Right.
Because you and I are the idiots that are going to go buy shit, right? And hopefully, you know, hopefully on my end it's set up well enough and not like I don't get stressed to the point where I feel 20 years old again and have like a 20-year-old regression and go, you know, buy some ridiculous car by selling a kidney or something like, or promising a kidney, because that's how it worked. It was like, oh yeah, I'll promise you that I'll pay you back for this motorcycle. Right. Yeah, right. but yeah, it's just it's always being dealt with in that way. You're always trying to find out at what stage and why, and are they having a complication due to their inability to do for self, or they're over gratifying for self, or inability, meaning like they can't get enough, or they want too much from a relationship piece, right?
Mm-hmm. So what do you? I mean, how do you? Is there any sort of like big takeaway that you have that you can boil down? Is it what we're saying, and that like it's not a bad thing on the face of it? Too much can be bad. Too little can be bad, because then perhaps you're never achieving anything in the now. You're only planning for the future. So, I mean, is it your recommendation, like what we're saying that we kind of have discovered ourselves, which is that in moderation, it's okay. You need.
We discovered ourselves to this point.
Yeah,
there's like everything afterwards that's just uncharted territory. But
yeah. But I mean, assuming things more or less remain the same, like there were points in time where I felt like I was always trying to fill some void, and it was stupid, and like all of the things that, again, sticking with the retail example or whatever, like drugs and stuff never were really something that I felt like was going to be a danger for me, because that's not for me. That's not gratifying, because I just worry about it too much. Like I don't want to become that person. Same thing with gambling or whatever. It's like, it's fun, I'll play blackjack or whatever, but I hate the thought of losing money. Like I'll play it to the end of, like, I'll play blackjack in Vegas or whatever from there for a convention, if only to the end of, like, I know that this is to hang out with my friends, to get free drinks, like whatever, recognizing
right.
I'm going to lose a few $100 or whatever, but that's a few $100 that I'm spending on the experience to be with those people and to do those things, not like that I'm going to walk away with $1,000. So like I frame it that way so that I don't get sucked into it. I think a lot of other people obviously are like doing it for the thrill of the hunt to win the money. So to that end, it's like, yeah, so many of the other things I just, they're traps for me. So I've never allowed myself to go down those paths. For like sort of retail gratification, it's about, I think, fostering an interest. It's about like this fear of missing out on things. It's about finding something that I'm interested in today. And there are certain sort of constants that are always there. Like cars for us are always there. That's going to be something that's always there. So in the background, I mean, I'm not buying and selling cars left and right, but there's always like something I'm sort of looking for in that way. And so I think that's what fosters the interest, right? Like most interests, unless you're like an intellectual and you just sit with a notepad, at the base of a waterfall writing poems, like most shit requires other shit to do that, right? Like you need a guitar to be a musician, you need a computer to be a graphic designer, whatever. So whatever your interests are, I think like the retail piece sort of fits into it for me. And so whatever that flavor of the moment is, I don't feel bad about sort of stoking the fire on that a little bit. And that's maybe that's some really long way of me justifying it to myself and to you, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
No, I think you have a balanced way of doing it. And that's fair, right? Because we're always going to have that kind of like hunger. You're never full all the time. It just doesn't exist. It's like a cycle of hunger. I eat, I metabolize, I poop, I am hungry again. This is like the life cycle of all gratifications, and in fact, it's like the same drive that is at the cause of those. One is just at a more like primitive essence of who we are and what we need for survival, and the other one's more of like let's say like a more evolved or like newer brain evolution stuff, where it's like more on the cerebral cortex versus like the brain stem things. I'm getting too far into that world too now, but yeah,
I need to buy a book so I can learn more about this.
I don't know what they are. Go read some neuropsychology. Yeah, I'm bad with remembering authors. That might be my own narcissism or something like that. I don't hold on to them in my head.
Oh, I could tell you like the last 4 books that I've read. So
yeah, but like for yours and mine too, right? So buying stuff, but it's also like mostly let's say it's control oriented, because I can like find which one I want. I can obsess over which one I want. I can find it for the right price at the right place, and I can do it for myself. So there's like some control elements that are maybe more covert, and then they're like really, let's say, independent self-soothings, where like, let's say someone has like a relationship addiction, let's say, and I say addiction layman style. But let's say they're just, let's say, codependent on being in relationships all the time. And I don't even necessarily mean romantic relationships, but they always have to be around someone all the time. And they always need reinforcement from the other person all the time. It's like forms of instant gratification, but that's their way of being, getting instant gratification. So like for you and I, maybe we found it good enough with the individual things. Okay. Maybe for someone else, the pitfall is the relational pieces of instant gratification. Well, I'm going to call this person and, I'm going to make them happy because I want them to be happy because it'll make me happy. Right. And it's like you're always doing things or always trying to find value in doing something for someone. You're always trying to be a tool or like help them or give them the right answer or whatever it is. Right. And that's like your version of instant gratification. Well, like maybe that's more obvious as to how that would be limited, because it's like if I'm running around all the time doing stuff for other people all the time, sure, in the relationships I might have decent status, let's say, but I've got too much gratification from doing that I haven't been able to build something for myself, or even within those relationships, something more long term, because I'm always bouncing around from here to there to there to there to there. It's kind of a weird way of how that plays out. You didn't think we were going to talk about that part of it, did you? You just thought we were going to talk about buying computers and cars.
It's gotten deep.
Yeah. No, it's tricky, man. Everyone's got a different, I hate this word, but like trigger, so to speak,
Well, yeah, and I feel, we're so focused on this one example, but yeah, you mentioned food, and that's another one that I feel like is one that people, including myself, I think everybody struggles with to some extent, where it's like, I want this now. You somehow convince yourself and justify it, that I'm going to eat like 1,000 calories worth of freaking chicken wings or something right now because
I wish it was only 1,000.
Whatever.
I go deep when I
2,000, and then later on, this is, by the way, like a real example that I just relived yesterday. It's like today I feel terrible, and it wasn't worth it, but in the moment it felt good. So am I gonna not do it the next time? No, of course not. I'm going to repeat the same mistake over and over and over the next time that I feel the urge to do that. I guess the point is that, perhaps I'm not going to do that today and then tomorrow and then, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Maybe it's like another week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks down the road. And that's enough to kind of foster that need for food fulfillment. But I think that is something that a lot of people struggle with, where you just like, hey, I'm going to eat this gallon of ice cream because why not? Because it makes me feel good right now. Ignore the fact that that's just terrible for you. And, but once in a while, is that hurting anybody? I guess not. And if you're never getting to that point, like people who are just working out and eating vegetables and boiled chicken all day, every day, is that good for you psychologically? I don't know, man. I mean, you tell me, but it just seems
that's like the deprivation part of it,
right.
Like maybe they're potentially more masochistically oriented and require more control. Like me too, I have that part in me. We're all like, during the best of my times of compliance to diet and fitness or whatever, it's like I budget out crap to eat, which is like, it's a problem, right? Like I've created controls that don't let me spin out. But if I really am honest with it, like there's some pieces of it where I ping pong between telling myself I don't do that, like depriving myself of it, to I am the guy that blasts a gallon of ice cream, and that's like, and then is what else is left? Like that's where I go sometimes. So yeah, does it happen often enough that it's problematic? No, but kind of like when we talked about the quarantine compliance thing. It's not always like the manifestation. So like the manifestation might be benign, but if you really want to get insight, like you have to think of what's behind the manifestation for that need of instant gratification. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to determine, like, is something good or bad? I don't know. Right. It's like it depends on the person and what they're willing to lose.
Yeah. Right. And I think some of like, you're sort of seeing that now, or I am, where a lot of the manifestation is just boredom, which I think is bad, right? Like when you're sitting there and you're like, I want to eat 20 chicken wings right now. The reason that you're getting to that point and willing to do it and have the time to do it and whatever, it's like, because we're all just sitting around thinking about, it's like, what can I do right now? Take the list of what I could have done before, narrow that down to like basically food or like Netflix related type shit that I can do like in the house. And then, okay, like I'm gonna rewatch Dexter, and I'm gonna order like Buffalo Wild Wings. That's those are my options. And so I think
I
like a lot of us are sitting around, or the retail thing, right? Like you're like, hey,
right.
let's buy like 25 dart guns and have a dart gun war in the backyard, and like nothing wrong with that, but I think our motives are sort of changing, especially being stuck right now.
Yeah, this context is really, I don't know. Let's say it's really, I'm sure it caused a lot of regressions in a lot of people just because it's such a severe context of being stuck in quarantine and all the uncertainties of it, and a deadly virus out there. So I feel like if we're looking at this period of time, it might not be the best thing to assess because it's kind of like an ongoing, let's say like trauma. Like people had ability and then it got taken away from them.
Yeah,
Right?
but it's also like a broader example of the things that we're normally dealing with, right? Like you have a bad day at work. Perhaps you're dieting or whatever. You have a bad day at work and you're like, fuck it, I'm gonna like have a beer or five. Like I at this point, it's Friday. Who cares? I had a shitty week. I'm gonna allow that to happen. And I think like we're now we're living that, and it's a much broader thing, and the timeline's sort of ambiguous. And so it's like I find myself struggling with that, right? Where it's like trying to stay, trying to exercise and diet and whatever, and it's just like, but shit, man, I might not see anybody for 2 more months, so who cares? Like I'll just get it together at the last minute before I have to go back into the office or something, like, you know what I mean? And I think the timelines are maybe a little bit more definite normally, but I think we're always, or at least I'm always kind of doing things like that, finding a reason and a justification, and sort of acknowledging that I'll take care of whatever downstream effects there might be down the road.
Sure. I mean, yeah, that's part of the human condition, right?
Right.
It's like, yeah, you want what you want. You can think through it rationally. And that rationale mated with sometimes, when I talk about like the head and the heart, here's like the worst case of when head and heart meet. Like heart is going to convince head to come up with a justification for like getting what it wants, right? And then it'll figure it out later. It'll be like, yeah, you'll get it later. Don't worry about it. You'll figure out how to, purge all of this weight later before you see everybody or whatever.
Right. So, I don't know. I mean, I feel like to kind of wrap things up, my sense is it's not always a good thing. It's not always a bad thing. If you can find some sort of middle ground, that's good for you, and that there aren't any downstream, macro negative impacts, that there's no reason not to sort of reward yourself in the moment, for whether that's through retail, whether that's through, I'm not going to condone like drug use, I guess, but I mean, if like, if you want to smoke a little pot or whatever, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You want to drink a little bit, there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to, eat a gallon of ice cream, there's nothing wrong with that. In the moment, in the now, in micro, but I think you do have to be careful of the long-term effects. I mean, I'm going to ignore like the ethical dilemmas that are presented by any of these, but if you can afford to buy yourself, a new bicycle that you just decided you needed today, go for it, as long as that's going to mean that you're not like skipping a house payment or something, like you can afford to make a car payment. That, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And, perhaps next year you're not going to be riding the bike as much, but that's okay. I mean, I think having aspirations and using instant gratification to sort of try to push yourself toward new things is not a bad thing. It's just it's important to understand that never doing it or always doing it is probably not the right solution.
Right. Yeah, I think of it like this might be, well, it is. It's an oversimplification, but it's like seasoning. Like you can't just eat seasoning. Okay, you have to have like the meat.
Watch me.
Yeah? Like you have to have the meat, so you can't just eat the seasoning. But then even if you have the meat, you have to have the right, let's say, like ratio of meat to seasoning. So yeah, it's a good thing when used like seasoning, but I always think it's important, regardless if you want to season the meat or not, to really consider why you have the feeling, because the manifestation doesn't always it's not always like sometimes it'll be easier to fix the manifestation of like, oh, I'll stop doing drugs or I'll stop drinking. I'm not suggesting that's easy, but that's maybe the more obvious thing that people recognize needs to get fixed. But beneath that, it's like, let me really understand what this is about. Why do I use this all the time? That, I think, is the more difficult part. So while you're managing your seasoning and then getting the right amount for the meat, really trying to think about why you use it anyway, because that's probably the thing that creates more of a trap for people in general. And if you never figure out the cause, okay, you may never have the ability to find the right amount of seasoning, or you figure out the cause and you're like, fuck it. And that's fine. It's your life. I don't, whatever, if that's how you want to roll. But yeah, I think overall, use sparingly, recognize what it is inside of you that, is requiring that. But no, if you're doing it sometimes, and I'm justifying too. If you're doing it sometimes and you found the right car at the right price and you have to take advantage of it because it's local and blah, 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 then you have to get it, all right?
Dude, that 9/11
even if you have to sell a kidney.
On whatever day that was, Friday, man, that was I really missed out on that one.
That broke my heart that you didn't.
By the way, during this recording, I ordered that CPU cooler that I needed. So
really,
it was the tab. Was
I talked you into it. I made you feel better about it.
I realized that it was Sunday now, and I could order it. Yeah.
I'll say I made you feel better. Yeah.
Oh, dude, I feel so good now. I'm riding the wave.
All right,
cool.
Man.
Well, again, should have done this at the top of it, but I just wanted to thank everybody. We've been seeing some new listeners pop up, some new subscribers and stuff. So thanks. If you haven't already, subscribe or whatever, follow us. That's cool. If you want to reach out on Twitter or Instagram, we're at Inhuman Pod. Or if you want to email us questions, comments, concerns about our advocating for drug use, or I'm just kidding. You can email us at inhumanpod@gmail.com. So thank you, all of you. And I guess we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Toodles.